The best way to learn any skill is to put yourself in high stress, low to no stakes situations. That's true of public speaking, that's true of communication, that's true of almost any skill that you can think of. And the reason why that is so effective is because we don't always know how our bodies and our brains are going to react when the pressure is on. So today I'm going to model for you an exercise that I do regularly, almost every single day, to help me develop those fast twitch muscles in my brain to help me to respond when the pressure is on. Now, this isn't necessarily low stakes for me. I mean, I hit the record button, I hit the live button. My words are going to be out there on the internet. But I wanted to model for you that it's okay for this to be messy. It's okay for this to be clunky. The purpose of this activity isn't perfection. The purpose of this activity is practice and reflection to seeing how you respond to those high stress situations. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my trusty friend, ChatGPT. And in ChatGPT, I've put in a prompt that I've developed with ChatGPT to give me potential topics. These are topics on public speaking, communication, storytelling. It's going to prompt me to talk about something specific in my area of expertise. Now, I'm going to take a look at those questions. I'm going to read through them. I'm going to choose one. I'm going to put it down here in the ticker for you to read. And then I'm going to set my timer for 1 minute. Now, that's going to be a long minute for me. It's probably not necessarily going to be a long minute for you, especially if you're not watching this live. You can just fast forward a minute. But during that minute, I'm going to be outlining my thoughts. I'm going to be kind of brainstorming the best that I can on how to deliver a 3-minute speech. Once that timer is up and you're going to hear an applause that lets me know that my time is up, I'm going to start speaking for about 3 minutes. After that, we'll stop and we'll debrief, and I'll let you know what I think worked well and what I think did not work well in my presentation. Okay, here we go. Spontaneous speaking. It's also known as impromptu speaking. It's also known as limited preparation speaking. Whatever the title is, it is asking you to respond to something in a limited amount of time. All right, so let's go, chat. It's going to give me the topics here. How do you decide when to prioritize authenticity over polish in a high-stakes speaking moment? Wow, isn't that relevant? What do you do when you can feel the audience disengaging but still need to stay on message? And how has feedback from learners changed the way you structure stories or examples when you teach communication skills? Now, I always go with my gut, and I'll talk about that later, but I'm going to go with number 2. So we're going to go ahead and drop this into the bottom ticker here, so you all know what I'm speaking on. Now we're going to remove ChatGPT and we're going to replace him or her, not sure, with my trusty timer. And now I've said all I need to say. I have my topic. I'm going to go ahead and begin. Okay, the question is, what do you do when you can feel the audience disengaging, but you still need to stay on message? Well, first and foremost, it's important to understand that we, as speakers, aren't always the most qualified source to determine whether or not our audience is engaged. Yes, we can see things. Yes, we can sense things. But keep in mind that, again, your adrenaline when you're in front of an audience is pumping. And if your adrenaline is pumping, you are in that fight, flight, or freeze response, meaning that you're not really able to logically evaluate whether that person who might be on their phone is disengaged or that person who is yawning is disengaged. Is it possible they're disengaged? Absolutely. But keep in mind that because we have so much adrenaline and emotions pumping through our brains and our bodies, we're not always really clear as to what the audience is doing. Furthermore, it's important to note that different people learn in different ways. I've had some audience members be on their phone the entire time I was speaking. And I have this sense of like, this is rude. They should be listening to me. They should at least be looking up, right? And after my talk is done, they'll come up to me and quote verbatim from my speech. It's not that they were disengaged, they were just learning in a different way. So I think that's the first element to understand, is that we're not always qualified to see what's actually happening. The second element that I would say to address this question is that it's an old theater adage, is do the show you know. I see so many speakers and trainers shift their curriculum, shift their agenda, shift their content based off of what they're seeing and experiencing in the room. And we'll talk about how some of that might be effective, but it's important that you stay on track. You've prepared a presentation, you've prepared content, so make sure that you're delivering that content. And let's be real. Sometimes, I know sometimes I deliver a 3-day training, 4-day training. At the end of that third or fourth day, people are just dragging, right? We're just kind of just slow, overwhelmed, tired. What I do in those moments is I acknowledge it. I say, hey, I'm sensing that the energy is low. I'm sensing that maybe we're tired. I'm sensing that maybe we're a little bit overwhelmed. And then I will go and adjust. I will let them know, I understand we have X, Y, and Z to cover, or we have 1, 2, and 3 skills that I still get to teach you. We're going to teach these skills, and after that, we'll either take a break or we'll conclude for the day. So it's important to acknowledge the sensation, the disengagement that you feel, but always you do the show you know. Hey, and I got a good applause for that. All right, so let's debrief what happened there. Again, you can sense a little bit of my clunkiness, right? You can sense my words aren't coming out smoothly, as smooth as I would like them to be when I am speaking. And that's because, again, the live button is there, the recording button is there. I'm speaking to an audience. And by the way, it's much, much, much harder to speak in front of a camera. It's much harder to speak when there's no feedback coming your way. But when I'm struggling, I'm also reminding myself to slow down. The more tongue-tied I get, the more anxious I get. And so when I get those moments of kind of slipping through my words or not saying the right thing or saying something that didn't quite sound right, I remember my breath and I slow down. Oh my goodness, I got another applause from my timer. We're going to leave that. Yeah, I just take a breath and I slow down. I really hate to oversimplify this because it almost cheapens all of the work that I've done to learn about public speaking and communication, but it's true. If you want to be better at public speaking and you want to be better at public speaking in high stress situations, all you have to do is slow down. So, having coached myself there, I want to talk about how I presented and what I did. Now, the benefit to this question and the way that I've developed the prompt is that it's asking me questions that I'm going to be regularly asked. There's another prompt that gives me much more nuanced and much more specific and challenging questions, and I'll do a video with that prompt at some point. But this is a question that I get very often, right? In fact, I think I got it yesterday during a coaching session. What do you do when the audience is tired? And so what I did is I actually, before I outlined, when I read the three questions, I went with my gut, right? I thought that first question, how do you decide when to prioritize authenticity over polish in a high stakes speaking moment? That's a great question. I want to come back to that. But the reason why I chose number two is because that's the one that I felt most comfortable with. That's the one that I felt like I could deliver the best possible speech with. Now, that was my choice in the moment. There are times when I look at the three questions and I think, I'm going to find the one that I have the least familiarity with, that I have the least organized content with. So after I chose my question, then I outline. I try to outline in groups of threes, right? I try to say, what are the three ideas? What are the three main points? What are the three components, the three steps, the three anythings that to be able to communicate this message and answer the question? The reason why we humans like threes is the first pattern, right? And we love patterns. Patterns are easy to remember. So I wrote down 1, 2, 3, and I started to just brainstorm. What are the three things that immediately come to mind? Well, the first thing that came to mind was do the show you know. That's my common response. Then I thought about, well, you do adjust slightly, but you don't completely throw out your program unless there's something else happening. But before that, I started to think, before we even get to the tangible results or the tangible steps to answering this question, we have to put in the disclaimer that it's true. Our brains don't always receive the right information. There's a great video that I'll put in the description to this live. It's called The Science of Stage Fright. It's by Ted Ed. And it's a great 4-minute video that explains what happens, what is the biological response to public speaking. And literally, your eyes can't see as clearly because you're pumped full of adrenaline. You're looking all around. Your brain is being filled with all sorts of stimulus. And so you have this adrenaline pumping through your veins. You can't always determine whether, again, that person on their phone or the person yawning is necessarily engaged or disengaged. So I felt like I really had to make that clear, because sometimes people think that one little, piece of evidence that might be disengagement might lead to disengagement. They get this, confidence, their confidence just completely shatters. So we have to keep that in mind. So I rearranged my numbers and I said, number 1, we're not qualified to evaluate. Number 2, do the show you know. And number 3, I said, adjust slightly by calling it out. Those were my notes. And if you noticed, I looked at my notes. And when you are practicing these speeches, and even when you're in front of an audience, it's totally okay to reference your notes. It's totally okay to look at them and make sure that you're on track. And when you do make verbal mistakes or blunders or have filler words or ahs, keep in mind that most people aren't nitpicking those mistakes. You are, because you're delivering this talk in this high stakes situation. But most people's brains don't latch onto that. They're listening to your specific content. So I would give myself a relatively successful spontaneous speech there. I think there's a few things that I would work through. And then here's the extra step that I take, is I take my recordings and then I watch them. I watch them in 3 different ways. First thing I do is I just listen to the content. Second thing I do is I watch it with no sound, right? Because body language and facial expressions communicate much more than our actual words. And then the last thing I do is I take a look at the transcript, the actual words, even the non-words that I use, and I read that out loud. Now, let me tell you, it is really difficult to do that. And it is really challenging to see yourself and to coach yourself. But you're going to see the elements where, number 1, you're falling short of your own expectations, and it's going to give you targeted areas of improvement. If I say 50 times in 3 minutes, then I realize, okay, I need to reduce my filler words. If I am delivering all of my content with absolutely no expression, then I know I need to, change my facial expressions and focus on that. When you receive your own coaching, as cringe as it may be, you're able to not only pinpoint what you need to grow on, but keep in mind, you also get to see the results of your work. Just like we're not qualified to evaluate whether an audience is really engaged with us or not, we're not qualified to really evaluate our own performance. There are some times when I'll record a video like this, or I'll give a talk and I'll stop and I'll think, oh my goodness, what have I done? That was terrible. That was awful. I was doing this and I was doing that, and my shoulder was doing this weird thing. I don't understand it. And then I'll watch the recording, and this weird thing that I thought my shoulder was doing was just this, right? Or maybe I thought I said something wrong and I didn't actually say it. Or maybe I thought I was delivering completely deadpan, but my facial expressions were great. You see, too often we think of watching recordings as let's find the mistakes. But don't forget that this drill, as well as many other public speaking drills, it's not just to point out the areas where you're growing. It's also to point out the areas where you're already shining. Keep that in mind, whether you're practicing public speaking skills or any other skill. Keep in mind that, yeah, you may stumble. Yeah, you may make mistakes, but that's the point. That's how we get better. And even if you are making mistakes, even if you stumble, there's still a lot, and I mean a lot, that is already working for you. So here's my promise to you. In the description to this live video, I'm going to put in the prompt that I've worked with ChatGPT on that is general to you, meaning that you're going to fill in the blanks for your own particular field, your area of expertise. You can customize it however you want. And then I encourage you to try this out. You don't have to do it on a YouTube live like I'm doing it, but you can do it in the comfort of your own home. And just watch and see, where are you shining? Where do you get to grow? How did your body and your brain react? Because that is how your body and your brain are going to respond to those high stress situations that are also high stakes. Hey, if you have any questions or any comments, please make sure that you drop them in the chat. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button, and please make sure that if you have any other questions, put them in the chat and continue to speak up your story. Until next time, I will see you soon.